Thank you so much, Tim, for joining me today and for being here to share the story of the work that Queensland Public Trustee has been doing with Squiz. I'm really excited. Let's start by hearing a bit about you and your role at Queensland
Mm.
Public Trustee.
So I came in as delivery manager for the first of several projects that Public Trustee is trying to do. So my specific role was to manage the implementation of a new website. So it was called Public Website Replacement, and that's as opposed to their intranet. This was a long-held aspiration of the Public Trustee. There have been several false starts to try and replace the website. One of the motivations for it was we had an older legacy system here. My role really was to come in and very quickly verify requirements, very quickly go to market, and then bring in a supplier and a new CMS that we could quickly build out a new public website for the agency. I only started about 12 months ago with that responsibility for a new website to be live in 9 months, essentially. So from finalising requirements and getting your vendor, and then the build out of the solution, testing, release to be done by 30 June.
It's been a big first year.
It was, yeah. So my job really was to understand the requirements and then build a team that would allow us to deliver on that timeline. I've never done a new website like this before, but I've had a lot of technology project experience, probably for the previous 10 years I've been managing technology projects. So
You were the man for the job.
yeah, I guess so. But I'm old, and so I don't get so frightened when things start to drift a little bit off track. So that just I know that you can just fine tune things often to get them back on track, and maybe
Yeah.
that's what attracted them to me because they knew what they were asking to do was ambitious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Love that theory. You alluded to when you were talking about sort of you dipped in there and alluded to some of the reasons why you were looking to do this project or why Public Trustee was looking to do this project. Can you tell us a bit
yeah.
more about some of the challenges that the organisation was facing with the previous CMS provider?
Yeah, so the previous CMS was out of service. They hadn't done the upgrades that were required to keep that CMS current. There is a current version of that CMS.
Hmm.
So that's the technology that underpins the solution, but much worse than that. There had never been a consistent approach to web development. So as the business has changed, they've just added on a new part of the primary navigation. In a somewhat surprising situation they found themselves in were 14 levels of primary navigation. When you come to the homepage, it's just an overwhelming number of options offered to a customer. So the customers were getting lost. Anecdotally, the kind of talk that was happening internally in the organisation, someone would come to a customer counter in an office and they'd say, I've checked on your website and this is what it says. And anecdotally, the trust officers would say to the person, don't take any notice of what's on the website. So it's just a complete undermining of what the website is supposed to be for. And it's supporting the delivery of service for the organisation. So there was a lot. We had a trust rebuilding activity to do as much as we had a system rebuilding activity to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So
on actually, just to dig in quickly to the system that you mentioned previously, and I'll dig into the other parts as well. I'm really interested. I'm just want to, before we get too far away from it, you mentioned that there was a new version of the system that you were previously on, but the organization hadn't upgraded to it. Was there a reason why you hadn't? Was it just too
it
hard
was,
or too
yeah,
cumbersome?
so we're on version 6 or 7. I'm not quite sure which, but the current version is 15.
Mhm.
So for everyone who's been in the technology space, you know that you often can't get from a version 6 or 7 to a version 15.
Yeah.
There are several steps that need to be taken to get to the current version. And so they'd actually decided it was too hard it was just as hard to upgrade to the current version as it was to actually step away and reconsider, is this the right CMS for us to be on? Or is there a better direction we should be going in terms of the technology? The other thing I'd just like to say, Lorna, is that unfortunately, the organisation had several false starts on this, and there was no reason for the organisation to have any faith that this time it was going to be successful, given that there had been 3 or 4 false starts previously, where people had invested energy and faith into those previous attempts. There was a lot of work to do just to
Yeah.
convince people, just give it one more try, get behind this. Let's see if this time we can do it. And we did a whole lot of things to serendipitously fall into place to make it work. You build project momentum, and then you need to build people's trust that it's worth my while to stop what I'm doing and to get behind this effort, because I think this time I've trust that this time it will be successful, even though 3 or 4 times before it hadn't been. So that was I think that's part of why I was brought in. I'd just come from a successful project, and I'd had a successful project before that. So I came with all of this bravado and bluster and self-confidence, but every project is a whole new challenge. You're only as good as your last project. So this is the current one. So I needed to build trust in people, in the organisation. People needed to trust that we'd be able to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like that trust piece, there was a trust piece externally as well as internally. The trust piece
Yeah,
externally was making sure people were having a reliable experience and
that's right.
getting the right information. And then the trust piece internally was that we've been burnt by this before, we've seen it, it's not worked. So obviously that was a big piece. But I guess what were the other success factors? Like what did success look like for the organization with this project?
So we wanted to, and we weren't being silly. We weren't trying to reduce expectations, but we just needed to so most critically, we needed to get onto new technology.
Yeah.
So we gave people an expectation of most of the content is going to be lift and shift. So don't expect there to be a massive change in what the words that are actually on page in the content. So we wanted to really downplay expectations in that regard, because behind the scenes, we were going to have this whole new CMS, which no one can see, of course. No one knows how good or bad the CMS is behind the scenes. All they can see is what's on the front end.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, and very much in our favour, there was also an effort underway to rebrand the organisation and new colour palette as well. Incredibly, that has probably got as much notice as anything we've done with the content, anything we've done with the information architecture, anything we've done with the back-end CMS system. It's that people can see that this is different and new. So we just needed that project, which we weren't running, by the way, the new logo, branding and colour palette. We needed to just keep aligned with that parallel piece of project. So it was an assumption and dependency all along the way for the project. And very fortunately for us, they did come together at the same time. And when we went live, it was with the first reveal of this new branding and colour palette, which just meant that you couldn't ignore the new website. Whatever was good about the new website, it was also clearly brand new with the new colours. So that was good.
Fantastic. And it's really interesting because we're hearing more and more organizations, or noticing that more and more organizations are recognizing the value of doing those sort of incremental pieces,
Yeah,
and doing the lift and shift to get yourself into that new platform that's right for you, and then doing whatever goes from there. And it's very rare that those two big projects would align so well as they seemingly did for you. But I guess from your perspective, had you not have had that branding ready to go, just the lift and shift would have been the right first move anyway, to have then brought in the new branding afterwards.
so Lorna, I said that we wanted to reduce expectations, and we wanted to make sure that people understood we were just lifting and shifting. But as we lifted, of course, what you do is you review. And we saw so much more opportunity than we had expected to get a consistent voice and to get a new strategy that sits behind the content.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make the content authoritative and warm and trusted. So
Yeah.
that kind of carried. So when you look at this content, do you read authoritative, warm, and trusted? And then we wanted it all to be in a single voice. So there is such radical change in the content. So we haven't changed the business. And fortunately, we didn't have to do that, because the old website was really desperately needed this kind of strategic change as well. So having decided that we could do more than lift and shift. There is not a page, there's not a sentence that hasn't been touched and changed to align with that single voice of the organisation that is authoritative, trusted and warm. Every word, every sentence has been changed to make sure that it clearly says this is the education piece. So we're very focused on making sure that those areas that we, QP, the Public Trustee of Queensland, is responsible for, we are providing good education about wills, deceased estates, executive services, powers of attorney, financial administration of people who need their finances managed. So we wanted to make sure that it's an education piece there. And then secondarily, and complementing that, was the services piece. These are the services. So you can get your will done through us. You can have us manage your deceased estate. You can have us provide documentation for your power of attorney. We'll manage your financial administration, your bank accounts for you, if that's what's needed and that's what's ordered by the courts. And this is how we'll provide those services. This is the education piece. This is the service piece. Someone coming into the site, it is virtually unrecognisable from the old site, except that it still is a Queensland Public Trustee. It's still the same organisation, but the way we're talking to our customers has completely transformed. Apart from the colour, apart from the logo, it's a complete transformation actually that's happened for their website experience. And in the organisation, people are gradually coming to the realisation that this is a whole new way that we're talking to our customers. And the organisation trust officers can now point to the website and say, have you looked at this?
Yeah.
And this is authoritative, this is current, this is the way we do this service.
Your story at the beginning really highlighted that. I think it's not too much of a stretch to say the website was doing the organisation a disservice. It wasn't reflective of actually the service that you're offering people. So it sounds like you've really landed that, and I want to dig into how you got there. So if we take a step back and think about the actual project, how did you kick things off? Obviously there was a lot to do, but how did you get started?
I think probably it's fair to say it's a story of multiple fortunate engagements. So when I arrived, they'd already engaged someone to pull together a set of requirements. So we went to market with a set of detailed requirements that consolidated. These are the three areas we want you to look at. So we want a solid technological base, so good CMS. We want a solid design and content capability that you bring to the organisation. And then we want some capacity to develop out these particular features. We've got a calculator on the site. We've got an API link that needs to be done. So there's some technical pieces we need you to do. We need you to nail the content and we need you to nail the CMS. So it was really in three distinct parts. These are the detailed requirements, but it wasn't a long list of requirements like often happens when you go to market. It was a consumable set of requirements that the vendors that we went to, it was just a limited approach to market. I think we went to 11 vendors to get full offers. It was a relatively tight timeline, so it's only 4 weeks for vendors to respond, but we already had our evaluation team ready to go, so they had only a week to evaluate. But we'd already decided that we were going to shortlist and then have supplier demonstrations from the shortlisted suppliers. So they were already in the suppliers' calendars when they made their initial offer. So having gone to market in the beginning of October, had contracts by the end of the year. Yeah. And that meant that we could have onboarding. First week back in January, we were straight away onto Squiz and we got underway with the design piece. We always knew that we'd like to do a direct customer engagement to make sure that we had card sort, tree jack, and then a one-on-one navigation assessment. So we did 3 stages of proper design before we even finalised the information architecture. And then we started the build of the content behind that design piece. Yeah. And at the same time, started the technical build. So we were very fortunate. Every step of the way, we've managed to have really good support resources for the procurement and then for the design and build. I feel like Squiz just went across the organisation and said, who's the best we've got at these things? Because Public Trustee needs our best. So you guys very fortunately put in front of us the best of what you had to make sure that we delivered this thing. When we started out, the timeline that you said was second week of July, something like that. And we said, no, we've got to be live by 30 June. can't be done. Yes, it can. How can we figure out a way to do it? But your project manager working really well with us just to continually, in a true agile way, continually adjust things so that it was possible for us to get to that 30 June go live. We didn't end up going live on the 30 June, but that was nothing to do with the system. It was all to do with just finalising the branding. Actually, your project manager and your developers and your subcontracted content people just continually worked with us to try and parallel run parts of the project so that we were not finalising one piece, but getting close enough to be pretty sure this is where it would end up, carrying that risk into the next stage of the project. Both of us acknowledging that there is a chance that this could change, but it's close enough to being where we think this will land that we can now go on with the next stage of the development. And realising that we might have to do some double work in the end. To be honest, all of those judgments we got right. So that meant we had good internal, good Squiz folk engaged, so that by the 10th of June, we were ready for UAT, security assessment, and final assurance review, all things that needed to be done, so that by the 17th of June, we have some final remediations, 23rd of June, ready to have a go, no-go meeting for 26th of June, go live. Absolutely amazing what we managed to get done. It was all about, we're in this together, we can make this happen.
It sounds like it was beautifully project managed from start to finish, but as you say, from both sides. I guess what I'm interested in knowing as well is, how did you know before you actually engaged Squiz, what were the kind of key things that stood out to you that really assured your team that Squiz was the right one to go with?
So there were probably two things. I had experience elsewhere in Queensland government to know that Squiz Matrix was a sufficiently robust and mature product, industry standard technology that we could safely build onto and safely know that Squiz would be available to support the solution long term. And we desperately needed that. We desperately needed to move to a current industry grade product. The second thing that probably convinced me that Squiz was the right product was the very close association that Squiz has had with the development of the Queensland Government design system. We needed to have some quick wins, and what the design system gave us was removed a lot of the design decision making that we would otherwise have needed to make as an organisation, because trying to get three people in a room to make decisions about design was always going to lead to 6 possible design outcomes, everyone having 2 each at least. So Squiz having had such close association with the design system, then convincing the decision makers in the organisation that this was the way to go. If we are to manage this in the timeline that you've given us, we just need to have some quick wins. The design system gives us a quick win. Squiz knows the design system. So there was no additional translation that needed to happen to allow the CMS to be built out into the design system, because all of that work had already been done. The design system was a proven product. Squiz support for the design system was a proven association. So after that, the project manager that you put on it, Luke Percy from New Zealand, was just the right person for what we needed. Someone who would listen to us, had his own ideas about how we could get things done. So none of us came to a conversation with a monopoly on ideas. Let's just work together to get this done.
Are there any other capabilities within the Squiz DXP that you're utilising at the moment?
So Funnelback we use. And then, so just jumping back to the start, search on the old site was awful. If you put a search term in, you didn't know that it was going to understand your search term, and you certainly didn't know what it was going to bring back. It was just a random chaos. We desperately needed search to work, because we all know that when people need something quickly, they'll often go to search. And then there are probably some other DXP pieces. The reason we went with DXP, though, is because it's what you guys offered. And we knew that it was going to give us access to the suite of Squiz and extended Squiz capability. Even if we weren't using it straight off, we thought that it's better to have that in from the outset. We'll just buy the whole package from the start.
Yeah. And as you say, you mentioned a little earlier about the scalability piece. You want to know that you can continue to scale and you can come up with new ideas and you can try new things without having to plug in a whole new piece of tech that isn't already available to you.
Yeah, exactly. So there is some aspirations in the organisation whenever you embark on a project like this. So this was about the external public website, but we've got an intranet that desperately needs to be upgraded. And of course, when we said we're going to build this, we're going to do this project, along comes a request, can we include intranet in this little exercise while you're at it? And I said, of course we can. And then we want AI, we want a chatbot, we want the whole kind of enchilada of additional requirements. We said, yes, we can do all of that, but this is the amount of time we've got, this is the budget we've got. If you want those things added, then it'll be this time, this budget. And anyway, why do you want them? Let's hear the problem statement that underlines why we should be doing that now, rather than just having it in our back pocket.
You mentioned briefly there was another partner in the mix. So I believe that was Deep End. And I'd love to hear a bit about how they were involved in the project and how, I guess, the three organizations worked together to bring it all together.
Yeah, what we needed from them is we needed them to provide us with guidance around the approach we should take to the content, and then in the detail, how we should look at each package of content, how we could repackage that content. So the whole idea of having an educational piece and a services piece was something that came from Deep. And then they were responsible for the development of the content strategy, which articulates that the overall level, this is at the detail level. But then in particular, they actually had hands on the keys rewriting content. So in order for them to do that, they needed to have a deep understanding of the business. So they were involved in direct meetings with the business to actually understand this is how Public Trustee does its business. So really they were a true on-the-ground content development partner.
Yeah.
We worked with them to redevelop the content. Then when components were being built, they also assisted us with the development of the components and the populating the content into those components. So there would be conversations about what's going to work best for this. They would ask us, or we would ask them, what do you think is the best component to make this content come to life the way we should? Design of the homepage, design of landing pages, design of content pages, all of those detailed design-based decisions were worked through together, where Deep End became an extension of the project team to deliver words on a page and components on a page for the website.
Fantastic. Again, another well-oiled machine by the sounds of it.
Oh, absolutely. We needed everything to continually come together.
Yeah.
So like on every project, it's less about the individuals and more about how do we coalesce the efforts of those individuals into a team effort. And again, I said before about in an agile way, that's what we tried to do. We tried to continue the momentum, continue to deliver product each sprint. So each fortnight we had product coming off the production line.
Yeah. The other thing that you mentioned previously around how the projects came together was around obviously the big part of it was the use of the design system. I'm interested to understand just to really articulate why that was such a benefit. So I'm assuming it's around having those kind of ready built components that you could try out and see if they worked on your site. But what was the main benefit of just having a design system ready to go?
So what the design system really constrained us in a happy constrained sort of way. People would come to us with content that they thought should be presented in a certain way. And we would go to the design system and say, this is a catalogue of available components that we can use for presentation of your content. And these are the three that you can choose from. It just meant that we could have a consistency across the site, not just in content and not just in words, but actually in components. So there's a recognizability. Users feel safe that they are still on the site that they thought they were on because of the consistency in the design. That's subconscious reassurance. They're still in the right place. They're still looking at the right information. They haven't been bumped off somewhere else. Or if they are off somewhere else, then there's a clear change in that design so that they know that they've moved place. It just a bit like managing your scope. Managing design was really vital for the timeline we were working against. Yeah. It just meant that we had these pre-tested, pre-configured components. By the way, some of them were so new that they hadn't been fully tested. So we did full component testing. So the design system ends up a little bit better for having a bit more testing done on it, but at least we had a starting point. And it meant we could limit the conversation that we had with subject matter experts around how their content might appear. Fortunately, the design system had such a lot of effort put into it already that we never felt constrained by that set of components. Some in the business probably would have liked a more novel way of presenting their content, but it just meant we could use what was there already.
Yeah, and really maintain that consistency. And yeah, the fact that it is something that's reflected quite a lot more widely now within the Queensland space and the Queensland government space in particular. Again, that sort of adds to that familiarity and that sense of reassurance that people have probably seen similar things on other websites as well.
Yes, that's right. And the more that .qld.gov.au agencies or
Mm,
sites move towards the design system means that there is a kind of a reassurance for all of government. So I
yeah,
can trust this because, again, I don't even need to look at the URL to know that I'm on a Queensland government website. By the
yeah,
way, because we were rebuilding an entire new website, it meant that we didn't have any legacy components that we need to try and squeeze in.
yeah, yeah,
We were rebuilding all of the content. So it meant that this is entirely Queensland government design system. There's nothing that's not design system based on the website. So, and because we've done it just when the design system was being finalised, it means that it is kind of the latest and greatest for
yeah,
QGDS, the latest and greatest for Squiz, which is DXP. It means that public trustee finds itself in this very unusual position of being at the cutting edge of what Queensland government websites should be.
yeah.
So we're being invited to things now that there's no way in the world public trustee would ever have been invited to before, to talk about our experience of using the
Awesome.
design system, our experience of using DXP.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And so you've obviously got a website that looks beautiful and is very consistent throughout and gives people that reassurance and from a tone of voice perspective, there's that consistency as well. And you mentioned through the migration in particular that you're obviously at that point analyzing what you've got and whether or not you need to change some things up. Did you see a significant reduction in pages or like what sort of
Yeah. So
changes were there?
no, we went from about 300 pages to about 80 pages. So
Yeah.
there was a mess, but because the old website had just grown organically, there was one page with just 2 lines on it. And just because people had this new idea, let's just add a page to the website, and there it is, 2 lines on the website. And so all of that consolidation, we really
Yeah.
needed the organisation to trust that we understood the business well enough to be able to rewrite their content and not lose any of the detail or the important, if there's legislation that guides it. So we
Yeah.
really needed to reassure the organisation that we do understand the organisation well enough. We had a lead SME that joined the team. So someone who already has to trust the organisation, and he became a key guide for exactly the words that we would put on the page for this transformed content, where it might be spread across 5 or 6 or 8 pages, and it'll now just be one continuous page, but broken up into sections. Just modern content is written this way. You can scroll through it on your phone. It re-renders for whatever size
Yeah.
and shape of device you're working on. All those things just to reassure the organisation, yep, we know what we're doing.
And I guess in terms of benefits for your team going forwards, obviously we've talked about the new website and the building of the new website and the launching of the newly branded website. But what does it mean going forward? Is it easier for people to produce new content for the website now? And who is producing that content as well?
So it is subject matter experts, but we built, the original website was kind of half of someone's job to maintain the content on the old website. So really, there was only ever going to be just someone comes along with a request, you turn that into HTML web content, you publish it onto the website.
Mm.
But because we've now got a team of 2 people looking after the website, it just means there's a lot more capacity to have the conversation about strategically, this is what we're trying to achieve. This is a content that's already there. This is the way we need to develop your content and weave your content into the existing design and our IA. So it's a very different conversation you can now have with subject matter experts. We would like to empower the subject matter experts, but we haven't introduced, for example, distributed authorship. We've kept it so that only those 2 people can publish content onto the website.
Yeah.
So we've tried to keep controls over how the website is managed going forward. So we'll talk to you about your content, we'll help you shape your content, but finally we will publish your content and we won't leave it to you to publish,
Yeah.
to decide what you publish.
And it means you'll never end up in that swarm of disparate content again. Because I guess for you as well, that trust piece, the importance of that is so much through the tone of voice and the type of language that you're using. And as much as you can have components on the site and you can have your design consistent across the site, maintaining that tone of voice is probably the hardest piece if
Yes.
you've got lots of different content authors. So yeah, having people who are really keeping the guardrails on that, but everyone else understanding now what that tone of voice will, what it will sound like, how it will be presented, so that they don't ever feel like their content's being taken out of context or anything,
Yes.
will help
Yeah, that's
massively,
right.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. It is. You're absolutely right. We actually need to maintain that single voice of QPT. This is how
Yeah.
QPT talks to its customers on its website. This is how QPT talks to its customers at the counter when we're talking on radio, wherever we are talking. That this is the way we talk. Yeah.
Mm, it's fantastic. And from a end user perspective, what sort of results have you seen there in terms of improvements to the way that people now use the website?
So we've got slightly longer time that people are spending on the site, and we think that's probably because there's a little bit more detail that they
Yeah,
can delve into. So we're not taking that as a negative; we're taking it as a positive.
yeah.
Unfortunately, we didn't include in the bill some kind of quick assessment of experience. So
Mm,
one of the things we would like to build into the website is some kind of a star rating system or something like that, just to allow us to gauge over time whether whether the changes we're making to the website are improving their experience or reducing their experience. Anyway, we don't have that kind of baseline
yeah,
data, but what we do know is that there's about a 20% improvement in time spent on the site.
yeah, that's great. And so we've mentioned previously a little bit the fact that the DXP offers you this opportunity to do a bit more. Are you able to share any details of what's coming next?
Yes, so we're very keen to establish some good analytics on the site. So we're in a conversation at the moment about exactly what we want to have as our baseline data for the new site. And we've contracted someone to prepare us a report, but we're working with some people in Squiz to just make sure we understand the analytics we can already get off the site with the analytics part of DXP. But the other thing in the backlog, we've got some sub-sites that we need to work to develop out. So one of those is actually another website that we link off to. So it's something that we will look to transition over to the site. And then we've got another website that we're also responsible for that we'd also probably like to bring into the DXP world, just so we've got consistency across all of the platforms that we're responsible for. And we're
Yeah.
just having to learn one. Everyone just needs to manage one tech and not multiple techs.
And that intranet will probably rear its head as well at some point,
Oh,
I'm sure.
internet. Oh, internet.
Well, that's fantastic, Tim. I feel like we've really dug into all the details that I was hoping to pick your brains on today. So unless there's anything else you'd like to share about the project and working
So
with Swiss?
one thing that went badly.
Yeah,
Um, it-
excellent.
we were so busy with development of the new website that we didn't really have. Once we go live, these are the capabilities and the documentation, but all of that detail that we needed to have in place post go live. So I guess as a warning to anyone else embarking on this kind of project, remember to do those things. There are lots of projects that kind of just happen and then you say, now it's over to you.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. So we didn't want that. We wanted to leave the business with a good taste in their mouth.
yeah,
So for that reason, it took us another 3 months really to
yeah.
finalise that handover.
Yeah, so the message is remember that it doesn't stop at the go live.
That's right.
You've
Yeah,
got a duty of care to the people who are taking it on from there.
that's right. Exactly. Yep.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate all your time. It's been fantastic to chat to
Oh,
you.
it's great chatting.